Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar about analyzing student work in math assessments. We are super excited to connect with you and talk about Edcite, SVMI, the perspective from the Santa Clara team. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Really, the objective for today is for anyone who is watching live or watching the recorded session to understand how their team could use Edcite and SVMI to capture and better analyze students' mathematical thinking. And I always like to start with the end in mind. And I think that there's no better way to start something like this than with experience from educators who have actually used both platforms and really know the power of looking at student work. So, when you take a look at the agenda for today, we're going to really start with that experience from the classroom and hear from the Santa Clara Unified School District team about how they have used Edcite and SVMI. We're then going to kick it over to the Silicon Valley Mathematics Initiative, SVMI's approach and resources, hear from their team. We'll talk a little bit about Edcite's capabilities and a little bit about how you and your team could use this next school year and take some questions. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into words from the ground, what it has looked like for teams actually using both of these great programs. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Deanna Watts, who is an elementary math TOSA from Santa Clara Unified School District. She's got extensive experience working with SVMI, and she's got experience working with Edcite, and I'm really excited for her to share her experience today. So with that, I kick it over to you, Deanna.
Thank you so much. Let's see. We've been using SVMI and Mac tasks in Santa Clara Unified for over 20 years. I myself have been a part of that process, and we have used them as formative assessment, summative assessment, in some places grade level placement. We've used them for all things, but what is the best part is being able to see what the students know and are able to do and the ways that they explain their thinking in a rich problem-based environment. We were really happy to have the opportunity to pair Edcite and SVMI and put the two together in a digital platform. This still new to this process. I facilitated the baseball championship task in 2 classrooms this past week. We're pretty happy with the way the task is formatted for the students and the ease of which they can answer the items and show their thinking in a digital way. And we are working with the Edcite team to make that process as efficient as possible for teachers in looking at the student work.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thanks, Deanna. It's always just super helpful to hear from someone who's actually worked with, SVMI, with Edcite. And, if you've worked with SVMI for more than 20 years, that is a good amount of time to say, like, this content is good for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you. And, maybe at the end, if anyone has questions specifically for Deanna about like what it's like to use as, on the ground in the schools, we can definitely loop back. So next, I want to introduce the Silicon Valley Mathematics Initiative team, David and Cecilio, and I'm sure you guys can tell us a little bit about yourselves, and just let me know when I should change slides, and we'll turn it over to you to talk about everything. Thanks.
Thank you, Julia. My name is David Foster, and my co-director that co-directs with me is Cecilio Demas. Give him a shout out, Cecilio.
Hello, everyone. Cecilio Demas here.
And we co-direct the Silicon Valley Math Initiative, which has been around for 25 years. And the cornerstone of our work is around student thinking. The Silicon Valley Math Initiative was formed to support the improvement of learning of mathematics by students first in the Silicon Valley, but we now work across the country. And a cornerstone of our work is what we call our Math Assessment Collaborative. You can change the slides. We started using and actually providing a performance assessment as early as 1999 and have been doing it every spring ever since. We have performance tasks from kindergarten through 12th grade pre-calculus that are available, and every single year we create a brand new test and put that means that there are more than 100 tasks that are available to teachers at every single grade level, covering every concept, every important big idea at each of the grade levels. Next. These performance assessments are significantly different than a lot of different math tests that are designed in the United States. In fact, we needed to search the English-speaking world to find where the best performance tasks were made, and it brought us to Nottingham, England, where we met the people from the Shell Center, and they had an organization called the Math Assessment Resource Service, or MARS, and we started contracting with them to create performance tasks. The architecture of a MARS performance task is sort of demonstrated in this skateboard ramp you see on the screen, where the first question or two provides access for all students, because we first want to know what it is students actually know and are able to do. And then we follow the trajectory of the big idea of the task and get to core, or what we would think would be meeting standard. But we're not satisfied with merely meeting standard and finding out if a student can answer a question at standard. We'd like to probe deeper into the student's thinking and find out if they can apply, generalize, or justify and explain their reasoning or understanding. So in that way, we span the sort of the learning trajectory of a big idea at a specific grade level. Next. So a MARS task has lots of opportunities for students to take on specific challenges, show their thinking, and explain their reasoning. And the parts of the task, usually a task covers 2 pages in length. That goes through the ramp that we showed on this on the previous slide. Next. The performance task is scored using what we call an analytical rubric, or a point scoring rubric. Every question, every example, a certain amount of points are assigned to that, and the full number of points usually hovers somewhere around 8 total points, but it could be slightly less or slightly more. Next slide. So this is, so just like we said on before, the different levels. So for this particular task on visual fractions at 5th grade, 84% were able to meet minimal access into the program. And then it explained what was required to meet standard. And then I think you have to click it one more time. And then 30% of the students were able to do that high ramp, the high ideas. Next slide. Along with the task in the rubric, we have a class set of work that can be used for a number of ways. Teachers can compare their student work to a different class set of work, or this class set of work could be used to calibrate or standardize the scoring that goes on. So there is rich, real student work that goes along with every single set of tasks that we have. Next slide. And we use these mostly for formative assessment practices. It's true, the tasks are given each year for summative tests, but the real value for improving teaching and learning comes in the formative aspects of using these tasks at strategic times throughout the school year. Next, please. So here's an example of what might happen. A teacher or a grade level or teachers that are commonly teaching the same course or the same grade picks a task that they want to give their kids because they're in the middle of teaching a unit on that big idea. The students complete the task individually, and then the students then the teachers working together analyze the student work. They score it, they look at trends in student work, they find out what it is students were successful at, where students need more learning or unfinished learning to occur, and then they plan what we call a re-engagement lesson. And a re-engagement lesson is not reteaching, it's actually using the student's own work and thinking and redesigning the lesson to have students critique the reasoning of others, learn from mistakes or misconceptions that surface, or actually model or try on strategies from other students, or model successful approaches or good explanations. And then that lesson is then taught back in the classroom and what we at a later period of time. As we said, we call that a re-engagement lesson. Next slide, please. So the real focus here is on student thinking and their work so that we can actually improve student learning. So these tasks give us a lot more information than whether or not a kid got a question right or wrong, but actually because we can see their work, we can find out what students were trying. Lots of times students are trying ideas or strategies that work sometimes, but may not be applicable for that particular time, or have misuse of logic, or miss the step as they tried to go forward. In this way, by being able to see the student work, we can analyze where students are and meet them where they need to be. Next slide, please. So we also, in addition to all the other, for every single task we have, we see the results of student work, and we mine that work and create a chapter for that particular task that we call Tools for Teachers. And the Tools for Teachers have a number of pages. Next. There's an introduction. There's an alignment to the Common Core standards and the progressions. You actually get the task in the rubric. There are student performance data that you can see from the history of the task, how it was done, and analysis of student successes and where they need to address unfinished learning, and specific suggestions for re-engagement activities and lessons. Next, please. And this is just an example of one of the pages of a Tools for Teachers, where in the left-hand column is points that students would get from the task based on the rubric scoring. And then based on those points, we know what understanding students have gleaned from that and where they still need to work and do some more work. Either they have misunderstandings, unfinished learnings, or challenges that go with that. Next slide, please. So a re-engagement lesson is basically this. You actually give the task as the initial activity. You look at the student work, which creates a story of what students in your class are making sense of or struggling. You pick a few examples of work from your students, and then you design re-engagement prompts to have the students critique the reasoning of others, compare understandings, or to show as models of explanations or great approaches. And next slide. So here are just a list of reasons why you would use our Tools for Teachers. Before, at the end, Cecilia, would you like to add anything to this discussion?
Thank you, David, for the overview of the structure of the performance task, the rubric, and the Tools for Teachers that go along with that. I don't have anything else to add at this point.
Thank you, Julia.
Awesome. Well, thank you, David and Cecilio. It's really exciting just to hear about all of the thinking and research and approach to the content, because that's why I think this combination of SVMI materials and Edcite technology is so exciting. So right now we're going to then shift into talking about who and what is Edcite. So then everyone in the audience can understand how both of these programs can be used together. So I'll go ahead and I'll talk a little bit about Edcite and then turn it over to my colleague Brian to talk a little bit more about our specific overlap with the SVMI approach. So Edcite is an assessments for learning platform, and it works really in two buckets. For assessments for learning, we want to make sure that all teams have what we call our aligned assessments and that you have actionable data. And when we're talking about aligned assessments, we're talking about making sure that the questions really authentically measure that skill that you're teaching. So we don't want you to reduce the skill being asked to fit into limited technology. We want the way that students answer to truly align with what you are teaching. So if I am asking students about graphing quadratic functions, that I actually have a way for them to graph that quadratic function. If I am asking students to build a model of their mathematical thinking, that they have tools to do those things, that we don't reduce the skill to just picking pictures of those things, that students actually get to get in there, show us what they know with the appropriate tools. We're also talking about alignment in terms of aligned to state standards because we know how important that is. We also want to make sure that our technology is aligned to the end of year state expectations, because the reality is our students need to know how to navigate those online testing platforms in order to show the larger world how much they've learned this school year. And so when we talk about aligned assessments, we're really tackling that bucket in terms of aligning to the larger world's expectations of the technology. We're talking about alignment to the skills you're teaching and to the actual standards. And alignment to standards leads really well into actionable data. And so Edcite does want to make sure that you have instant, real-time data by standard, by question, and that you can pull data from student work, which is what, Brian will talk us through a little bit more. So that is, that's what we do at Edcite, and the who and why of our company is that we want to positively impact students. Our team is full of former teachers, and we really care about having a good impact on kids at the end of the day. So we are excited to be working with another program that also cares so much about kids. So I'll turn it over to Brian to kind of jump in from here.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, so it's really good transition from that. I mean, I'm a former math teacher. I taught high school math myself, and it's been such a privilege to get to work with SVMI and learn about how all the background that you just heard about their content, and then how they think about student thinking and the priority of student thinking and student work in math education. So this is a quick little GIF of one way that students can enter work on Edcite. And Edcite is it's a very powerful tool. So we have a lot of options for how students can upload their work, whether it's attaching a picture of that physical sheet on their question, or using math keypads. This is showing a drawing tool. We also have text options where they can type. Now, one of the great things about working with SVMI is we get to learn how they think about this. And they've given tasks for so many years that they've given many on paper. And one of the benefits of paper is it's very flexible. A student can draw a graph, or they can write text, or they can write equations or expressions. On the feedback from SVMI, we're developing a new math item type that's going to allow students to be that kind of flexible. So they could insert this drawing or take a picture of a piece of paper that is in the real world and actually load that into an essay response. So that's something that we're really excited about, and it's something that we're building to basically make it even more open-ended so that students can choose whatever strategy they want to use in order to answer the question in a way that they feel is appropriate. Another benefit of going from paper to digital that is something that we're excited about and something we've seen as helpful for students is the accommodations that can come with it. So, if you have to read something aloud to 30 students and it's all pencil and paper, that's a lot of individual little conversations and helping them. With digital assessments, we can add text to speech to lower that barrier and make that access point that David was referring to something that more students can access. We also have some other supports that include line readers, magnified text, and masking tools, and more. So those are great supports for students in accessing the content. Now, Deanna alluded to this. We're working with both Santa Clara and SVMI on making this view even better. But a really important part, as you saw from SVMI, is being able to grade flexibly using a rubric. We want teachers to see the student work and learn from that, and then use that for their re-engagement lessons. So our rubric view allows you to see the student work, score it quickly, and store that score with the student work so that you have this kind of digital representation of student thinking in whatever format it is, whether that's from paper, whether that's something they typed in the platform, or something they drew on our platform. It's all there so that you as a teacher can go back and see how the student used those tools to answer the question, as well as what score you gave them. Something else that we're excited about that's coming soon is the ability to audio record feedback. So you can record a quick message to students about, hey, good job, you're thinking about this the right way. Here's a few more things to think about. Again, just trying to lower that access point so more students can both access the material and then learn from the feedback that they get. Because at the end of the day, I love the point you made about formative assessments, and that learning from understandings and even the misunderstandings is a huge part of mathematical growth and student understanding. So we also support a lot of report options. And again, this is, after it's graded, we want things to be teacher scored and teacher graded. We also have some auto graded questions. But after it's graded, you can see a standards analysis, a question by question analysis. You can see growth reports to see how students are actually improving within Edcite. And we also allow for easy data export to third-party systems if you want to bring that data somewhere else and analyze it there.
So I'll kind of jump in. Thanks, Brian, for going through all of that. Yeah, I think this is kind of a nice one to kind of end it on, because it's like, if your team is looking for a way to give common assessments next school year, common formative assessments, and work as a team at digging into student work and planning those re-engagement lessons, and then I do think that the content from SVMI and then the tools on Edcite for delivering it to students, being able to analyze that student work, and something that we didn't talk very much about, but just our pathways for managing common assessments, being able to push those out across classes, being able to see aggregate data across your team. All of those are going to be really helpful when planning those common formative assessment protocols for next school year. So if this is something that you think your team is interested in learning more, definitely you can reach out to me, Julia at edcite.com. I can absolutely loop in Cecilio and David, and we can make sure that if you need more information about their teacher tools, or anything else that you're curious about, the tasks that they have, reach out to us, and we can go ahead and get you the information that you need, and hopefully start supporting your teams with both SVMI materials and professional learning supports, as well as our Edcite Schools platform for managing and delivering those assessments in an aligned way. So we'll go ahead. We've got a couple minutes left. Are there any questions that people would like to put into the chat? And other presenters, if there's anything you'd like to add, feel free.
Well, Julie, I do want to also state our excitement and gratitude for this potential partnership of being able to work together to bring in the decades of work with performance tasks and the technology that the Edcite team has been creating and using with school systems. And we look forward to the possibility of working collaboratively to support school systems, because in the end, it really is about supporting the teacher doing the work with students, doing the amazing teaching and learning at the classroom level. So we are really excited about this and look forward to hearing questions and seeking opportunities to partner with districts.
Awesome. Thanks, Cecilio. Well, great. Well, it looks like we are right at time. I'll go ahead, and it doesn't look like we've got any questions right now in the chat, so I'll turn off the recording. Thanks, everyone tuning in from home.